Really appreciate you coming this evening. My name is Stephen Bassett. I'm a political activist, troublemaker, cage rattler, all around miscreant. And I actually have that on my business card. First, there's been a sort of a change. You can probably see by this here, a very fine machine. It's an American Professionals Model SC8FC. Very nice, very smooth. Change the program, and rather than a keynote tonight, because let's face it, you've heard one keynote, you've heard them all. I'm going to be doing karaoke. I'm going to start with a medley of Bobby Darin tunes, and then I'm going to segue into some relatively not well-known Julio Iglesias songs in the original Spanish. And when I told, Guy's a really easygoing fellow. When I told Guy that I made this program change, he was, it's cool. All he had to say was, "I'll be at the festival and no refunds." So anyway, no, I'm just joking. Everybody who knows me knows that I take this way too seriously to do carry. Strangers in the night, I thought I found, oh, sorry, do that. All right, well, look, some of you are going, oh my God. Before, yeah, you kidding, I do it, that if I were to do one karaoke song, that would follow me around on tapes for the next 30 years, At my wake, they'd be playing them, all right? So I'm not that dumb. This is the age of the internet, and everybody has a camera in every part of their whatever. So look, what I want to start with, I'm not doing the keynote yet. We have to get some things out of the way first. And I don't want you to get into keynote mood, right? Don't waste that. Hold it. We're going to do some announcements here. I just want to talk about a couple things real quickly. First of all, give you a sense of some of the things that are coming up the rest of the year in terms of conferences, since you all are conference people. First of all, we have the MUFON National Symposium, which is going to be July 16 through 18. That's up in Denver. I will be speaking there. Several people here are going to be speaking there. So you can, and all these conferences you can check out on the internet. You can also go to my website, paradigmclock.com, to the conference section, and you'll see them all there with links and so forth. And then following that in August, I think August the 28th, is the Bay Area UFO Expo. And then in September, we have the Alternative Realities Conference. And then in October, there is the Paraworld Expo in Los Angeles. I think that's on roughly around the 22nd. And then on October 31st, NUFOC is holding, that's National UFO Conference, is holding a very significant event in Hollywood. This is a major effort to revitalize the 40-year-old NUFOC convention. It's going to be in Hollywood, and it's going to stay in Hollywood. And I am going to be speaking as well there. And a significant amount of effort is underway right now to get invitations out to a host of entertainment celebrities and other, I'm serious here, power players, to come as our guest, to come here and these speakers, and spend some time with them. We'll have a private dinner, because it is time to get the people in this country who have money, have wisdom, have open minds, backing this subject matter and these issues and this researchers. We have paid our dues. It's time to get some support. So this conference is very significant, and that's October 31st. And then in November, there is the Majestic Documents Crash Retrieval Conference, second year, and that's going to be in Las Vegas, I think roughly around the 22nd. Tremendous speaker lineups for all of them. Quality better, production value is going up. That's just through the end of the year, folks. And all of that, and all of the thousands of people that are going to attend, and all of the subject matter that's going to be presented is, as you know, about nothing. Nothing. Because according to your government, there is absolutely no extraterrestrial presence, and this phenomena has no substance to it. Isn't that interesting, right? Okay. Now, I'm fishing through my mind here because someone stole my notes earlier. I've got a couple of other announcements that I wanted to make. Yeah. What other? A lot of people have asked me about the X conference. So I thought I'd give you a little update. Paradigm Research Group, my organization, produced that conference in April of this year. in Gaithersburg, outside of Washington. It was a very successful event. And by the way, how many people here actually were at that conference? Raise your hand. Right, and did you attend the keynote speech that I gave? That many, huh? Well, shit. That means I can't use any of these anecdotes. I'm going to have to use new ones. You know, Edgar Mitchell has been given the same basic presentation for the last 15 years. I have to come up with new anecdotes every time, right? That's because I didn't walk on the moon. The X conference is scheduled for next year in April 22nd through 24, but we have got some tidying up to do before it can really go into full production. I am actually on a tour, not just a speaking tour, but I'm on a funding tour. I'm actually going around the country, and I've arranged meetings with some important people who have the ability to perhaps underwrite this conference. And I'm going to be having those meetings in the next 30 or 40 days. And hopefully, if they go well, we will have the necessary funds to not only close out the initial conference, but launch the next one, and we'll get going. I was hoping to get, you know, one of those MacArthur Genius Grants. I've been waiting all these years, but they just never call. Because, you know, the way that MacArthur Genius Grant works is you can't submit for it. You know, you can't send in emails. You know, you have to wait until they pick you. Of course, anytime I meet anybody named MacArthur, I always say, hey, I'd love to have that grant, you know. Can't hurt. But it's around $1 million now, by the way. They give it to you so you can do your work unimpeded. And I want it bad, okay? Bad. They'll probably end up giving it to John Greenwald because he's good looking and 23, okay? But there's a reason that I want that MacArthur grant, not just the money, is because in all of this field of study, going back many, many years, 40 years, and all the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that have been involved, thousands of people that have been involved in extraterrestrial-related phenomena or those things closely associated to it, only one person has received the MacArthur Genius Grant. Some of you know who that person is, but I'll bet most of you don't. The person that received that grant for being a genius in this subject matter was Philip Klass. Philip Klass, the famous debunker, now very old, is on his way to a better place. A man that personally tried to destroy James McDonald in the 60s, the great scientist. Personally tried to destroy John Mack in the 90s, a story that many of you may not know. Received the Genius Grant. But you see, he got it so long ago, it was only like $150,000. So if I get this sucker, the first thing I'm doing is I'm calling up Phil. And I'm saying, if you weren't so damn smart, you'd have $1 million instead of 150 grand. So wish me luck on that. So anyway, we're gonna raise money. We're gonna get this conference going, and we're going to move forward. Now, another thing I want to mention here. I'm still not into keynote yet, by the way. Nobody get into keynote mode. Stay there. I had about 5 roast beef slices, so I'm not sure if I'm going to get in any kind of a mode here, but I originally thought I was going to give a presentation, you know, and not, I didn't know it was a keynote. Actually, it wasn't until recently I discovered it was a keynote, because I knew I was going to speak. I thought it was going to be a presentation. And presentations are not like keynotes, they're different. Because you're up there and you got your PowerPoint. And PowerPoint is cool. It's a PowerPoint world, folks. If you can't PowerPoint, I worry for you. I really do. As a matter of fact, this conference is about abductions. And those of you who have studied the field know that many, many contactees, whether they're coerced or otherwise, will relate experiences when they are taken in the saucer. They get a little table work done, or whatever, and then afterwards they are taken off into another room, and they usually are mind scanned first. They do a close-in mind scan, you know, where the alien just goes up to the person and they look right in their eyes like that. Ooh, don't go there, folks. And then they will show them a panorama, usually on the side of the craft. It's this panorama in which they will show oftentimes the person a past life. They will show them the future. They will show them things that might happen in the future, like enormous environmental degradation. Well, guess what? That presentation that they give, that is Microsoft Office 12,000. That is front page Galactica, folks. The aliens are fully PowerPointed, all right? So keep that in mind. Of course, they have a lot of bugs in the Microsoft Office 30,000, and it's driving them crazy, which is the reason why they're here in the first place. They've come back 12,000 years in time to get their revenge on Bill Gates, and that's pretty much why they're here. But the fact is, when you've got the PowerPoint and the projector and the remote thing and everything, life is good. Life is easy, right? You crank that sucker up, you got your little clicker, right? And you just start talking, right? And the slides leads you through it. So you basically, you get up there, hi folks, how you doing? I want to tell you about my experience. And you go click and you say, here's a light in the sky near where I live, Click. It's a little larger here, you can see, right? Click. Here's a 60-foot saucer hovering over my house, right? Click. Now this slide is intentionally blank because I can't remember anything that happened to me after the previous slide. Click. Now here's my first meeting with Dr. Roger Lear. Click. And here's the thing he took out of my toe. See, this is easy, right? This is so easy. But keynotes are not that way. You don't get that. You don't see any projectors. There's no screens. There's nothing between me and a squadron of flying dinner rolls but words, right? Words. That's all I got. And if they're not good, you don't like it, you're going to start throwing them. Don't butter them though. Just throw them regular because I can't afford the cleaning bills. So keynotes are different. They're difficult. In fact, what you're supposed to do, the basic keynote, you're supposed to do three things. You're supposed to make, if you're good, you make people laugh, you make them cry, and you make them mad as hell about something, and they're not going to take it anymore. And if you can do that, that is called, for those of you who are not in the keynote business, that is called a keynote hat trick. It's only happened a few times in the history of keynoting. And I was told by Guy Malone, before he left to go to the festival, that if I could pull that off, the keynote hat trick, tonight, my dinner, comped. So I'm going to do my best to do that. Keynote, roll tape. We're here in Roswell, New Mexico, not by accident, all right, obviously. By the way, how many here tonight are from out of town? In other words, you're not from Roswell. You've come in. That's a good number. Oh, they love that. Very nice. Now, how many of you all are from Roswell or nearby? Okay, I can see that the Roswell people are pretty much burned out on this ET thing. But thank you for coming. I have something for you all a little bit later. So you've come a long ways. You've come to Roswell. Why have you come to Roswell? Is it because the extraterrestrial issue is a religion and this is its Mecca? No, it is not. Though as you've seen this evening, there are significant religious implications to this. And it is very notable that in relatively recent times, the last couple of years, a whole phalanx of individuals has stepped forward to start trying to look at the phenomena through the religious prism. Perfectly appropriate, long overdue, very positive, it's a great thing. We're going to see a lot more of it, right? But Roswell is not Mecca. Is it important beyond the fact that an event happened here? All right? Yes, but I think for reasons you may not know. Or maybe you know, but you haven't thought about. For instance, is Roswell the beginning of the modern UFO era? No, it's not. The modern UFO era really starts with Kenneth Arnold sighting Mount Rainier. That's the beginning of the modern UFO era. It is the beginning of extraterrestrial, how would you say, obviousness, okay? Meaning suddenly, yeah, there's something here. No, evidence is overwhelming that extraterrestrials have been engaging the planet thousands of years. Probably as far back as we can go, but we can go only as far back as the cave paintings in Europe, around 30,000. It's not that. So what is it? I'll tell you what it is. And I'm pretty sure about this. Roswell represents the beginning of the truth embargo. That is its fundamental, broad, long-term importance. And that truth embargo started 1 second after General Roger Ramey informed people in Roswell to reissue the press release stating that it was not a saucer that was found here, but rather it was a weather balloon. That was the beginning of the truth embargo. And that's what's really important about Roswell. All right? Now, well, that's one thing. There's something else. I'm going to give a quick look at this thing, look at Roswell from a little different perspective, right? And try to give you a sense beyond even its role as the beginning of the cover-up, into an even larger role that it plays. Something very, very profound, all right? And here's how I'm going to do it. If you head northwest of here for exactly 200 miles as the crow flies, northwest, wherever that is, I have no idea where northwest is, but if you do, guess where you're going to end up? You're going to end up at Los Alamos. It's 200 miles, straight up there. It's like the other end of the pole. It's the other pole to this pole. And interestingly enough, and there's no special significance to this other than it's interesting, the two main crashes that are best known, the Brazil Ranch and the Disc, as well as the Corona crash, all occurred between here and Los Alamos. All right? Now, why is that significant? It is significant because two of the most important intellectual, moral, ethical dichotomies that the human race has ever faced occur at either end of this 200-mile polarity. The first one occurs at Los Alamos with its beginnings in the early 1900s. The process in which humans acting at their most brilliant, and we humans are capable of extraordinary brilliance and intelligence. We are not somebody's pet chihuahua, folks. We're very, very talented. Right? So I don't like this idea that, that these entities are like unbelievably cool and we're just down here going, well, don't bother me. Humans are incredible. They have theorized from scratch relativity, atomic physics. And that process started in the early 1900s, leading to the development of atomic energy and the atomic bomb, which, as everyone knows, was created by a team of scientists under the Manhattan Project classified covert program, it's a covert program, it's a fully classified program, one of the most secret of all times, except for the Russian spies that were in there, but they're always going to be there. The point is that they started that in the middle of the war, they did it for 3 years, and eventually they tested the bomb, Trinity. All right? Now you know about this. If you really want to know about it, you have to read, I consider one of the most important books of the 20th century. You need to read Richard Rhodes's The Making of the Atomic Bomb. Pulitzer Prize, National Book Award, the works. It's a classic. And if you want to understand the 20th century and more about the human race, you've got to read this book. Leading up to the Trinity test, and most definitely after the Trinity test, which yielded much more power than they anticipated, the scientists at Manhattan Project started talking to each other, and they basically said, what are we doing? And then after the test, they said, what are we going to do? And thus began, at Los Alamos, the politics of atomic physics. They ran petitions amongst themselves. Eventually, they submitted letters to Roosevelt and to Truman. They sought meetings. They did whatever they could, and by and large, led by Leo Szilard, they tried to make the case not to drop that bomb. Or at minimum, do not drop that bomb on a human being. They also tried to make the case, and this was a little more complicated, not to withhold the reality of this bomb from the Soviets. Let them know they were our ally, and if we don't, we probably guaranteed some kind of nuclear standoff thingy with unpredictable consequences. They were acting as ethical human beings. They said there's more to life than just science, and they got political. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details. It'll take all night. The point is that there was a fundamental dichotomy that they were dealing with. One was purely in the here and now, purely secular, almost amoral. It was utilitarian, expedient, and Machiavellian. In other words, it was as ancient as civilization. We think we're going to lose this many people if we invade Japan. This is happening, that's going on, so forth and so forth. Run that thing through your calculator, your slide rule. What's the call? Drop the bomb. The other was the other side of this polarity, in this dichotomy, and that is there are some overriding aspects of the human condition. There are certain things that seem to be ingrained, not only in the physical world, but in the philosophical and spiritual world. And if you look at it from that point of view, you cannot drop that bomb, because down the line there's going to be consequences you cannot foresee. And you're going to create a moral reality in this country which will never be able to change. And ultimately it could destroy us. Polarity. Now we know what happened. Truman made the decision to drop the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And we know what happened after that. Okay? The Russians got the secrets, the Russians got the German scientists, the Russians got their rockets, they started their little thing, we did our thing, and before it was over in 1991, the two countries spent in modern dollars somewhere around 18 trillion bucks. Almost went to war about 7 times. Whatever. That was that track. Okay? On the other end of this 200-mile dipole is Roswell. All right? Roswell, of course, as we know, was the air base that they flew the bomb out of. It was the only nuclear airfield. We know all about that. Okay, and that's fine. But I'm going to make you think about something else, because, as I pointed out earlier, it was at Roswell that the decision to begin the truth embargo was made, and that's started us on a course, which is now 56 years old, and it was based upon a fundamental dichotomy. There was two ways to go here. One was fundamentally utilitarian and expedient and in the here and now and Machiavellian and calculating, and they ran the numbers and they did the slide rules and they said it's in the best interest of the government, minimally, possibly the nation, and thirdly, the American people. We need to lie about this. The other option, right, was based on this thinking. Something unbelievably profound has happened. The war is over. We are trying to move out of that. We don't want to have a third one. We've already had 2 this century. That's enough. We need to start thinking differently. We need to implement the values we just sacrificed 500,000 men and women to secure. Tell the truth. The truth is powerful stuff. The consequences downstream would be very positive, because you are immediately seen in the post-World War period as the great bastion, not only of freedom and in power, protection, benevolence, philanthropy, but of truth. Dichotomy. We know what they chose. They chose expediency. And then they didn't just choose it, they wore it. They took it very seriously. Very shortly, they passed the National Security Act, founded the CIA, formed Magic 12, got the management group in place, started cranking up the NSA, and began the building of the secret empire. The intelligence wing of the military-industrial complex that started with a certain kind of people, brilliant, dedicated, patriotic, and evolved to the largest non-elective structure in the history of the world, the secret empire. It is an empire because nobody in it is elected. It is secret for obvious reasons. Its budget exceeds $100 million. A good deal of it is underground. It is an empire. And it has done as much to affect the nation that you live in, its policies, as just about anything else that you know. So, that's the other reason why Roswell is important, because it reflects the second most powerful dichotomy between two types of thinking that the human race has ever had to address. In both cases, please note, the debate was done in secret. It was done in the classified bowels of the Manhattan Project and the correspondences to the American government. In the case of Roswell, it was done in the classified bowels of the Army Air Force and elsewhere, and the presidency. These debates had nothing, they did not take place. They had absolutely no input from anybody in the civilian world, or in fact, anybody outside of a tiny, tiny few. Two of the biggest ethical, social, scientific debates of all time were made and resolved amongst perhaps 200 people. And they shaped the 20th century. That's why Roswell is important. Now, let's take another look at our country and the last 56 years through another prism. The Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Boy, do I love the internet, and boy, do I love the find function on the internet. And I know there's a lot of researchers in here who use it big time, okay? It's now possible to bring up the entire Bible and do word searches on things. It's probably even possible, and Mr. Heiser could probably confirm this, to bring up the Bible in the original Aramaic and do word searches in Aramaic and bring up the things you want to know and know how many. It's unbelievable. And it's part of the power that's shaping our world and making it possible to do what we do. Well, I did a word search on the entire U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. I did a word search on truth. For those of you who may not know this and need to get something for this $40 that you've spent this evening in addition to the meal, you can now take home with you the fact that in the United States Constitution, the word truth is not mentioned once. All right? And in the Declaration of Independence, it is only mentioned once. All right? Those two documents are the principal written components of the American social contract, which includes a lot of other stuff. Social contracts are not just the key founding documents. There are a lot of other things, but at the core of the social contract is those two documents. That is the contract that you and everybody else in this nation has with the government, and every other nation has a contract of some kind with their people. And periodically, and this is true of empires, it's true of totalitarian states. Every collection of human beings in a formal way has a social contract with some sort of overseeing body. And down through the history, from time to time, the social contract, the fundamental social contract between the governing body and the people is broken. And I'm pretty sure from my reading that, well, as I see it, you or your children or grandchildren never, ever want to be in a society at the time the social contract is broken. Trust me about this. You don't want to be there, right? A lot of other places you'd rather be. So if that is the core to the social contract, and the truth is out there, and we can handle the truth, and all of that, how come that word is only in there one time? And in both documents. The truth is important, isn't it? It's incredibly important. It's got to be in there. But it's not, except in the one case. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. You see, right away we got a problem here. You see? Truth apparently is not absolute because the Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal, and we've already figured out since then, and that is now part of our social contract, that all human beings are created equal, as any woman will tell you. So apparently that truth was in fact not quite on the mark. It needed to be changed. That all men are created equal, and they are endowed with certain unalienable rights. By the way, because of that, truth is in those two documents one time, and the word alien is in those two documents one time. So truth and alien basically are of equal footing in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Just a little thing I want you to know. Take it with you. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Certain unalienable rights, amongst which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Meaning there probably are others, but those three they mention particularly. One of the great questions of our time is one of those other unalienable rights the right to truth? That's a reasonable right. And if it is a right, then why isn't it mentioned in the Constitution, which was the document that pulled it all together? Maybe we don't have a right to the truth. Right? But we do have a right to life, and without that, you don't have anything. Right? Love, hate, pain, suffering, elation, happiness, you don't have anything, and you certainly don't have the truth. Given. Liberty. Without liberty, a significant portion of human experience is simply subtracted, and the truth pretty much goes with it, along with a lot of other things. Perfectly reasonable. Right? And then the third one is the pursuit of happiness. Right? And that is one of the most interesting phrases in that document, the Declaration of Independence, the pursuit of happiness. One of the great dilemmas that America and all first world nations face is that they get confused there, and they believe they have a right to happiness, and that the government's supposed to dish it up. But in fact, that's not what they got. They got the right to pursue it. Whether you get it or not, who knows? It's up to you. And so, because of that third one, I'm willing to guess if the founders had put a fourth one in there regarding truth, it would have been the right to pursue it, not to have it. But more importantly, there is, I believe, a very significant reason why the founders do not have the word truth, but that one time and nowhere in the Constitution. Because truth is, in fact, not absolute. It is not immutable. At the very basic level, it's pretty safe. You know? Is there a swimming pool down there? Yeah, there's a swimming pool down there. Is that true? Yeah, that's true. We're not going to have a congressional hearing about that. But we know that the moment you raise the level of complexity even a little bit, suddenly the truth just is hard to pin down. It varies, as I pointed out, with respect to the view of rights in the Declaration of Independence. So that's interesting, isn't it? It's not absolute. It can change, right? So if that's true, it would be a little presumptuous and possibly dangerous to get it into that Constitution, because you can't totally define it, and it changes, and that's not the kind of stuff you want in the Constitution. The Constitution's got to be flexible. Plus, it's a document that they wanted to work for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And they had no idea what was coming down the line. So they structured it that way, and they were smart. It was exactly the right thing to do, because they knew there were other parts of the social contract, and one of the most important other parts of the social contract was the fact that, and not the least, the reason being the fact that the founders were by and large very literate and intelligent men. There were very few women that founded the country, and that in terms of the founding and the signers of these documents. They envisioned a nation that was educated and very fairly quick succession, we started developing a public education system, an education system. They knew, and it's been talked about through all of history, that the only way you can maintain liberty is through education. You've got to have a learned public. Without it, you can't maintain it. It is too difficult to maintain it. So you have to have a learned public. The people will get educated. We'll even make it free, and they will raise their knowledge, and they will become at least aware of what's going on, and they will develop the ability to discern the subtleties and the gradations of truth. And they will triage it, and they will filter it, and they will get the best quality truth they can, and if they do and they act on it, the country is going to do well. But you see the issue here. You have got to figure it out. You have got to act on it. The government doesn't have a written obligation to do it for you. But you, and this is, of course, in the social contract, the written one, you elect them. Right? And so if you want truth tellers and truth givers and truth preservers, you'll elect those kinds of people, and that'll help the whole thing along. So it's all there. The package is all there. And if the truth should suddenly radically change and some people can't go with it, you can kind of move them out of the public arena, bring in other people, adapt, move forward. And nowhere would you get completely wrapped up in some sort of complete idiocy, such as the propaganda and lies of the Nazi run-up in the 1930s, and go off the deep end. And you'll be around for a long, long time. Right? That's why truth is not in the Constitution. It's yours to get, understand, and use. Fortunately, one of the drawbacks of a successful society is complacency, distraction. And over the last 56 years, the American people decided that the truth was something they would have given to them, like breakfast in bed on Mother's Day or Father's Day, that others would interpret it for them and then give them a quick summary, or they would dispense with it altogether. And since it wasn't important to them, they didn't need to elect truth givers, or they didn't need to care who got elected, and so they just stopped voting. And by the 90s, they were voting at record low levels. In the last election, 75% of the American people who could vote did not bother. It's 120 million people. Didn't bother to vote. Didn't need to. And that's generally been the trend for some time. The youth are not voting at all. They're completely turned out. And I don't know necessarily I blame them. If I was a kid and I was watching television after about 2 or 3 years, I'd be saying, this is insanity. Give me a Game Boy, right? Give me a skateboard and some posters of Britney Spears and Ricky Martin or whatever, and I'm just going to retire to my room and you all just go about your business. I'm not going to get politically involved. There's insanity going on out here. Right? What kind of insanity? We have extraterrestrials all over the world. The government says they're not there, and you are deluded. And it says it every single day, and it doesn't matter whether you're a genius or an average person, whether you got 5 PhDs, 6 Pulitzer Prizes, doesn't matter what agencies you work for. You could be a genius, connected, wired, and rich. You don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing here. That's insanity. Right? Insanity is not encouraging people to support, pursue the social contract. Now, people say, look, the government's got this thing about extraterrestrials, kind of holding it close to its vest, right? Got some good reasons. Probably some good reasons there. I know. Military, patriotic people, nice people, good people. I was in the military, my buddy was, my friend was, my uncle, my aunt. They're just doing the best we can. Let's just let this go. Let's let it go. It'll all work out, right? Someday we'll find out. We'll be fine. We'll be driving along in our SUV or some nice vehicle, go into a family get-together, and the radio will come on, and the government will say, hey, here's what's going on. So why is that not the way it's happening? Why is that a bad idea? Well, I think most of you know, not every audience I might be talking to would know, but most of you know that if you've learned anything in the last 56 years, you've learned that it isn't just a matter of we need to keep this ET things under wrap and we need to lie about it to make it convenient to do that. In fact, the government has become an endemic, systemic, pathological liar. The government is practically incapable of telling the truth about anything. And major policies are being pursued and conducted on the basis of false information all the time. And we just had a massive lesson in that, which I'm not going to beleaguer this evening. That everyone in this room knows exactly what I'm talking about. All right? I'm talking about the Iraq War and the information upon which we use to go there. I'm not saying good, bad, or whatever. I'm just saying when you conduct policy, you have the truth, you have good, almost the truth, or you got deception. And there is a difference, we're pretty sure, between lies and truth in the conduct of human affairs. And we get reminders all the time. We just got one. There have been countless others. You've heard some in the presentations. And if you go to other conferences, you're going to hear more. The government is in exactly the same position of the 17-year-old boy. I'm going to use boy here because 99.9% of the extraterrestrial truth embargo is driven, conducted, founded, and carried out by men. Women are much less inclined to play that kind of game. Simple fact. And so the 17-year-old boy, told his parents a massive whopper at the age of 15. Huge, right? And to, fess up to it would have been difficult. And so for the next 3 years, this kid basically, in order to sort of manage this thing, has been lying to his folks for 3 years until he's so wrapped up. First of all, he's pathological, confused, doesn't know what's going to happen, tremendous stress. He's on Prevacid, he's on Paxil, right, doing little drugs on the side, because he's had a 3-year lie thing going on, and now he's so wrapped up he can't see straight. And the only way it's going to stop is if he finally goes to his parents and says, God, I told you this 3 years ago, I did this 3 years, I lied about it, it's killing me, I got to tell you. The government is exactly in that position. It has been lying for 56 years. It is so tangled up, so wrapped up, so twisted, so warped. It's not only warped, it's warping things around it. It's like a massive gravitational lie. It's warping the relationship between the Congress and the Department of Defense, the President and the CIA, between NASA and the Congress, the people and the Congress. It's warping all the relationships in this country. And there's for some of you, there's a more personal way to look at that. And it's through the eyes of a very important man who's no longer really on the stage now. He had his time. A gentleman by the name of John Bradshaw, who was the Dr. Phil of the 80s. But for me, much more on the mark, much more appropriate. Dr. John Bradshaw. Dr. Phil is okay, but he's a hardliner. Let me tell you something. Between Dr. Phil and Laura Schlesinger, I mean, if those two, who are basically part of the get off your butt, solve your problems, and get on with your life, school of self-development, were to take on the Hulk and the Rock in a tag team match, I think the Hulk and the Rock lose, right? They would just basically embarrass them to death, and they would slink away. Bradshaw was not part of that school. Bradshaw wrote a number of books. Probably the most important was How to Heal the Shame That Binds You. He also wrote a book on family. On Family it was called. And he is the #1 person, if you want to try to understand the functions, dynamics of the human condition within a human family and how those dynamics go from generation to generation to generation. And one of the key, and he, by the way, he's part of that group that created the inner child. So those of you that absolutely can't stand the inner child, I understand. I basically am my inner child, so believe me, I can appreciate that. One of the key points and concepts that he developed was the concept of the big lie. And this turned up all the time in therapy, all the time in analysis, I say analysis, I mean, but in the family therapy that he did. And most of you, if you've been around, you've seen your share of dysfunctional families. I know you have, all right? They are everywhere, and you've encountered them. Very common trait. In a family that is seriously dysfunctional, with relationships messed up and character traits and acting out and everything else, there is often a big lie. There is a lie in the middle of that family. Maybe it's daddy's an alcoholic, right? Mama's a shoplifter, all right? Sis got pregnant. Whatever it is, they got the big lie, and it cannot be talked about. It has to be closeted, has to be controlled. And they all just dance around this big lie, and it just slowly warps the family dynamics, and all the relationships kind of decay and degrade. And after enough times, you've got enough problems in that family that not only is that family ruined, but the kids that emerge from it develop their own dysfunctions, carry that to the next family, get their own big lie going, and it just works on down the line. It is that concept that is operating in the United States government. The extraterrestrial embargo is not the only major lie, but it is the big one. It's the huge one. And it sits in the middle of our country, and everybody dances around it while it warps the relationships. It is poison. It is destructive. It will carry forward from generation to generation, and it could yet destroy this country, bring down the republic, end the experiment, and put you into a security state or your children. And I'm not a fanatic, believe me. I'm not extreme in my thinking. Most of the conspiracy theories I do not subscribe to, I do not participate. What I just told you was a moderate assessment. And you can find documents in your own government that actually talk about this, and you can find think tanks that are considered mainstream that allude to this. That's what's going on. So we either end this lie, or we will deal with the consequences. And since we neglected to get rid of the 20,000 nuclear warheads that were still left when that Cold War ended, and now the things, we're barely keeping track of them, and there's people all over the world, if they got their hands on them, they'd blow one up in this country in a microsecond. The fact is that we're as great a danger as we've ever been. Meanwhile, Russia is becoming far more restrictive and extreme, and could revert back to an enemy anytime, fully armed. They can retarget the warheads in about 5 minutes. And our political leaders, by and large, and I hate to say this, as a collective body, with respect to that issue and 1,000 others, and certainly the ET issue, are utterly useless. And I've been in Washington a long time. They are utterly useless. And this year, a bunch of people, some of you maybe will be part of it, but whatever, a bunch of Americans are going to contribute and spend approximately $800 million to elect another group of them to go to Washington. 435 members of Congress, plus another 4 from the territories, a president, and approximately 33 senators. You're going to spend $800 million to do it. And when they get there, there is a pretty good chance that they're going to be utterly useless. So you can see that Roswell, right, and this issue, and the last 56 years is a hell of a lot more important than just, are those ETs real or not real? Is it real or is it Memorex? It is so much more important than that. Right? That doesn't mean that those who want to just focus on that phenomena, abduction research, sightings research, crops, all that, no problem, no problem. That's all right. Do it. Keep doing it. It's been raising all boats for some time. It's been increasing awareness. It continues to drive the science forward. But as James McDonald found out, and a lot of other people found out, we already proved it umpteen times over. It's been proven. It's a done deal. It's done. It's put a fork in it. It's proven. The only reason that it is not part of our world is because politically it has been blocked. It is a political problem. It's a public relations problem. And it's not the only one that we have as a country, which is impeding our ability to be as great as we can be, right? The fix is in. It's rigged, right? NASA is a victim. You are a victim. People in our military are a victim. Other countries that are held hostage to this are a victim. The victims are all over the place to this lie, this endless, interminable lie about the most important piece of information in the world. We're not just satisfied with lying about, you know, this program and that covert dooflatchy and this flight from Nicaragua, you know, or this love affair, where we're not just willing to stop there. We have to lie about the most important thing in the world, and we think we're going to get away with it, that it'll all work out in the end. Well, it isn't going to work out in the end until this truth embargo is over. Right? Now, I don't want to go on too long here, because you got to get up tomorrow. So I'm gonna finish up, if you will indulge me, with a personal anecdote. I think it may be appropriate because, as you know, we have a very substantial component of researchers here who are addressing the religious perspective on this. Christians, fundamentalist Christians, and others. So I think what I'm going to do is a little testify it. All right? I'm going to testify a little bit, okay? Occasional amen, that's all right. A little amen, a little hallelujah, you can do whatever you got. I'm going to do a little testifying. I'm going to go get personal just for a little bit. Take a few minutes and say something, talk about something I've never spoken publicly about before. And that is one of the principal reasons, things, events that caused me to end up here tonight in front of you preaching about all this stuff. All right? A lot of things happen, but this one is of great personal importance to me, and I'll be quick. Essentially, in 1992, for I don't know how many times, the umpteenth time, I returned to Bethesda, Maryland, from my wanderings around the country, where basically I was doing absolutely nothing of importance to anybody. And things would just not go right, and I'd come back to Bethesda because there's family there and home, old family home there, whatever, and I'd come back. And this is it was 1991. It was 1991, very early 91. And on this particular trip, for reasons I don't know, I just felt it was time, finally, for me to go downtown. I've been downtown many times, been to a lot of stuff, but I had never been to the Vietnam War Memorial. And so I said, I'm going to go down to the memorial. Right? How many people have ever visited the Vietnam Memorial? All right? A number of people here. All right. I'm sure I do not have to tell any of you. It is a very powerful place, particularly when you go for the first time. So I went down and I walked along the wall. And then I did something which I'm sure a million people have done, right? It's just human nature. My name is Bassett, which is not a particularly common name. There's not a lot of Bassets out there. I'm probably the only Bassett in the room, I'm pretty sure. And so I went to the log. See, they have a log there of all the names on the wall, a big book. And I went there to see if there was another Bassett on the wall. Okay? And I went there and I looked through the book, and there was. There was just one. One Bassett. Roy Douglas Bassett. Died at 27 in 1969. And they list the panel, you know. So I started walking over to the wall to go to the panel. And I started to get very upset. Very upset. And I was surprised by this. I didn't expect that. I was moved when I got there. I mean, I was moved, and I'm talking about upset. And I went over there, and I started getting more upset. And so I had to go back to the benches. They have some benches off near where the logbook is, and I sat down, and I'm sitting there. I'm trying, what's going on here? What's happening to me? I'm really getting extremely emotional. And I sat there for a while, 10, 15 minutes, and it started to clear. I started to understand. It came to me what was happening to me. I was in college during the Vietnam War. I was in college or between colleges during the Civil Rights Movement. While I was in college or between colleges, I was drafted twice. I took 2 physicals. I was opposed to that war from the moment I was able to think about it in a sensible way. There was no way I was going to go to that war. There was nothing the government would do that would get me into that war. And I didn't go. I did what I had to do. Right? And I marched a couple of times in Washington, and I think I wrote a couple of letters in the newspaper, and it wore, you know, political type things in the newspaper where I was going to school. But I didn't get in the movement. I didn't join any organization. I didn't really get into it. I wanted it both ways. I wanted to kind of get my college degree so I could be a productive member of society, but I didn't want to go to war. But I also didn't want to, I didn't want to go drop everything and go get involved in a major organization and get out there and start trying to shift public awareness. I wanted it both ways. I spent a good deal of my life, certainly the first 25 years in Florida, in the South. I went to Georgia Tech in Georgia. I was in Florida many, many years. I knew the South, and the civil rights movement was going on, and people were coming down in buses. And I was opposed to segregation, of course. And I marched a couple of times. I remember I marched in a garbage strike march in St. Petersburg, and people were yelling terrible things and hate in the face. I remember that, and I marched once, but that's all. I didn't join any civil rights groups. I didn't get into it. I didn't sign up. I wanted it both ways. It's okay. I'm going to keep doing my thing, finding myself, whatever, and this will all work out. And then I finally got out of school, and I went off to do whatever. I was upset. The war had got me pretty bent out of shape, and I went off and hit tennis balls or whatever I did for the next, basically, 30 years. 30 years? No, 25 years. 25 years. Okay. And then in 1991, there I was in front of the Vietnam Wall. And what had hit me when I walked up to that wall, as I read that book, was an overwhelming sense that Roy Douglas Bassett had gone to Vietnam in my place. And that bothered me a great deal. In fact, I was drafted and took a physical in the year he was killed. And I was a very clever man, very clever young man, and I got out of all that. I never went. And so I went back to the bench and I sat down, and I always, you may see me, I'm always carrying a black brief around with me. I've been doing that for years. I had one that day, I had a little black brief, and there's a pad in there, and I sat down on the bench and I wrote a letter to Roy Douglas Bassett. Just not long, just one side. And I went over, I folded it once, and I went over and I had a pebble and I put it in front of the wall. Many people do this. In fact, there's an archive in Washington. Everything that goes in front of that wall is taken and put in the Memorial Archive. Everything. And there it is stored. And it's there probably today. It's been a long time. I don't remember the exact words, but I know pretty much what I wrote in this letter. What I said was that at least twice in my life, I was in the middle of some of the most important events in my country's history. History was happening. And in both cases, I took a pass. And I tried to just go on. I didn't engage. I wanted to just go on with my life, though I had no idea what it would be. I simply took a pass. And I made a promise to this man that if that ever happened again, if that circumstance ever rose again, I would not do that under any circumstances. This is 1991. I had no idea, I can assure you, that 4.5 years later, due to a maturation process that had been underway for a long time, but finally kicked in, right? I realized at the age of 49 that I needed to I was going to make the last years count. There was going to be something going on there, right? None of this wandering around in the Sinai business. I was going to do something. And I'm going to sit down and I'm going to, what is it? And when I did, and based upon some reading and a few other things, it came to me. It didn't come to me. It was there. It basically said, wait a minute. This business, which you've known about since you were a kid, it is matured. It is developing. Something is going on here. This is really significant. Go and do it. Though originally it was just do it, you know. It wasn't connected at that point yet to that moment in 1991, but it was getting there. And so through the good fortune of being in contact with the people at Boston at John Mack's Program for Extraordinary Experience Research, I convinced them to let me come to Cambridge and work them for free as a development person for 4 months. And I went there, and after 4 months, I mean, it wasn't my place. It wasn't where I was supposed to be. And then sitting in that office up there in Cambridge, one day it came to me. You go to Washington, and you get involved in the politics of this issue, because the politics is what it's going to take to resolve it. The science has been done. No one is really doing that. Go and do that. And I went and I arrived in Washington, D.C. on the 4th of July, 1996, and within a short amount of time created Paradigm Research Group, registered as a lobbyist, which nobody had ever done, and that began a trajectory of political activism that is now in its 8th year. And after about 6 months of that, the two connected. Because I knew after only 6 months that there was so much more to this than just whether these things are real or not. I couldn't believe it. And every year that's gone by, it's only deepened that belief. And I realized that my chance had arrived to fulfill the promise to that young man. And nothing was going to prevent me from doing that. Right? And so I made a commitment, which will be easy to do, not a big deal, that shortly after disclosure takes place. And for those of you who don't maybe know exopolitics, disclosure is a very formal concept. Disclosure is the formal acknowledgement of the extraterrestrial presence by the United States government and by extension other governments of the world to the American people and the people of the world. It'll probably start here. That's disclosure. Everything else is gravy. The formal acknowledgement, the end of the big lie. When that day comes, the paradigm clock at the Paradigm Clock website is going to be taken to midnight. It's going to be set at midnight. The new paradigm will begin. A new world will begin to unfold, for good or for worse. There are no guarantees. And anybody that remembers tonight will know that a day or two after that, I'm going to go down to the memorial, and I'm going to write another letter to Roy. And I'm going to tell him that I kept that promise. Right? For those who are here tonight, for those of you that see this tape, for any media that see this tape, for any member of Congress or the White House, any member of the CIA, the military, or the men in gray, and all those people that are sort of mixed into this evolving thing. And particularly the media, right, who have failed us so badly. Let me be perfectly clear. There are a growing group of activists. Believe me, I'm not alone here. There are plenty. They're coming. They're emerging. Some of them are here tonight. There's one right here. There's a growing group of activists. And we are going to do what is ever necessary and legal and proper and ethical. We are going to do whatever it takes to end this truth embargo, or we will die trying. Thank you. It's late, but I'm willing to take a few questions because this is not a subject that I think you hear a lot about. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to, or we can just call it a night and go to bed. You okay? You're covered? Good. Do you have any other, you have a question? Yes. David.
I'm just curious about when you say, willing to die for the cause, the number of people involved in UFO research who have had cancer.
Oh, yeah. When I say die trying, I really don't mean, getting taken out by the government. No, I don't mean that. Some people have been taken out, but that's not happening now. I think it's probably not happening now. It's happened in the year. I'm saying that we're going to keep at it until either we get it or we die. Okay, so I'm not saying that I'm going to be threatened or killed. No, not at all. But we're committed. We're in for the duration. We're not going to just get bored with this and say, I think I'll go, I don't know, get a hamburger franchise or something and kick back, play a little golf. That ain't going to happen. And next year there'll be more, and the year after that there'll be more. I think the disclosure is going to happen probably by April of next year. That's another subject. I can talk about that another time. Maybe come to MUFON. I'll talk about that up at MUFON. Any other questions? You okay?
For anybody who wants to become involved or become active, and also give your website.
Okay. A couple things. One, my website, the main portal is paradigmclock.com. You go there, you can get to all the rest of the websites. There's 5 of them. As far as getting involved, I won't go there. Look, vote. You're already involved. You're here, right? But vote. Tell all your friends to vote, right? Go to the conferences. Support them. For those, we have X-conference tapes. For those of you who didn't get to go, that's all back there. There's a lot of other vendors. Help them. Go and get that information. It's valuable, and it's going to get more valuable. That's great stuff. Do what you can, but you're already supporting. You're doing a great. Without your support, none of this happens, right? These conferences couldn't exist. This is a citizen process. It is extraordinary, and 1,000 years from now, historians will be writing about it, and they'll be referring to you and how you were part of this process and what happened and what it led to, because nothing is bigger than this. World War II was just one more war. We have them all the time. It's been going on for 8,000 years. Compared to this, World War II was just a bad nightmare. This is really big, and I'm glad to be part of it. And I'm glad you're with us. So, any other questions? You okay? Paulo?
Yes, from an international point of view, all of us in Europe and all of us internationally know that the secret is hidden in the United States, and we're all waiting, because we've been talking about a lot of times over there. It's different symposiums. We're waiting for it to happen here, because with the Mexican government, with what just happened in Mexico, which has an implication, they're cloaking the 11 UFOs around that particular plane, if you know that incident.
Mm-hmm.
They came clean, and that was the Department of
Right.
Defense asking for help of people around the world who had a similar problem. They did their deal for coming clean. Now, what the world is looking at is, was there an answer from the United States? When is the United States going to...
Not yet. Mexico sent a message to us recently. France sent a message a couple of years ago with a Cometa report. Belgium has sent a message. The UK released documents. All of these nations are basically deferring to us. They are held hostage by our power, which is significant, our economic power, political power. They owe us, okay? Marshall Plan, World War II, defeated the Soviets. They owe us big. They are waiting for us, but they're losing their patience. And that's fine. I'm not going to criticize them for that. Unfortunately, they're enabling, okay? They're exactly like the dysfunctional person in the family that enables that person in the family that's got the alcohol problem or whatever. By letting it go, by deferring, they're enabling this thing, and it keeps going on. And our country is the one that's getting warped. We're the country that's turning into the national security state, rather, not a military state. So, in a way, I kind of wish they'd get a little bit more antsy and start putting even more pressure on us, right? Any other questions? We okay here? All right, folks, I'll see you tomorrow. It's not too bad.